Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to the Multiverse. I am Dan.
I'm Drea, and we own Multiverse Comics in Culpeper, Virginia. So the last video that we did, we talked about Hal Jordan and his origin, or his retcon origin, and one of our viewers asked us why we didn't cover Parallax more, because apparently if you talk about Hal Jordan's origin, you have to talk about Parallax, which, not really in my wheelhouse. I don't know much about Parallax. But it made us think about the broader idea of entities, and so you have this entity, this thing taking over a host, including Parallax, but not limited to, and then the thing does horrible things. The host and the entity together do horrible things, and in that instance, how culpable is the host? Like, how much responsibility should they have toward what happened? And so we're going to start with Parallax, but we're also going to talk about some other very famous duos. Can't call it a team-up. I mean, what?
Yeah, a little bit.
We'll just call them entities for now. In some cases, it's the full entity. In some cases, it's the entity and the host. In some cases, it's retcon to be one or the other. But we'll get into that. For right now, I'm just going to turn it over to Dan because, like I said, he knows more about Parallax than I do.
Yes. Hal Jordan and Parallax is very complicated. It started out as simply just Hal going crazy. He lost his city, everyone he knew, and he wanted the Guardians to undo it and killed any Green Lantern that got in his way.
Wow.
And ended up stealing their powers and became a entire DC Universe level villain.
So the dark side of willpower.
Yes.
Okay.
He was virtually unstoppable, but he was stopped, of course. So,
All right.
and then he,
So how did Parallax come into this?
he called himself Parallax.
Okay.
At that point, there was no entity. It was Hal Jordan. He just took a new name as Parallax.
Okay.
Ultimately, he ended up sacrificing himself, so doing one good deed in the end to save the Earth. And so he died.
Right.
And then he went to Purgatory, just bonded with the Spectre for a little bit because the Spectre didn't have a host, which is another good entity relationship to talk about, I suppose.
Right. Let's focus on Parallax for now.
Yeah. Spectre tends to be different depending on which host. So
Fair enough.
But yeah, he was Spectre for a while, and then Jeff Johns came along, and DC wanted to bring back Hal Jordan as a Green Lantern, and I think Jeff Johns went with a story that retconned a lot of it, but it used pre-existing stories to back it up. So
Okay.
it was handled very much as a reveal rather than
The retcon.
a complete, hey, this
Okay.
what you read didn't happen, because everything did happen. It's just now it was this entity that had always been trapped in the central power battery on Oa, and that was its prison, and that was also used as an explanation for the yellow weakness.
Right. So it's kind of like what we were talking about last time, how once something is revealed, you can go back to the previous stories and things are made more sense, although this was more intentional to create a new story or to create a new layer for the story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. It was really intentional to make Hal Jordan not culpable, because it's like, how could he be accepted as a hero, as a
Right.
Green Lantern again, if he was responsible for killing all the Green Lanterns?
So is he then absolved of everything?
For the most part.
Okay.
I mean, Batman still has an issue with him.
Batman has an issue with everybody.
Yeah,
so.
but it's really personal with Hal, because some of the stories I was reading, it was almost like, hey, Batman actually trusted Hal, and then Hal went insane, or allowed himself to be corrupted.
Yeah.
And
Well, you don't trust the thing that you fear the most. And so in the case of Batman, it makes sense that he wouldn't trust Hal, because one of Batman's biggest fears is that he will himself be corrupted. Specifically by the Joker, if you really want to dig that far into his psyche. But, he could be corrupted. He is always in that option to be corrupted. And so the fact that he doesn't trust Hal because Hal was once corrupted, whether by himself going insane or by the entity itself, I get it.
Yes.
I don't necessarily support it, I just get it.
Yeah. So ultimately, it's revealed the entity, and Parallax is the source of the yellow rings that Sinestro had wore once he was no longer a Green Lantern.
Okay.
And it led to War of Light, which was discover a whole bunch of other entities for the rainbow lanterns, basically.
So before we get too far into the lanterns, because I know you can wax very poetic on that particular topic, let's focus on the entities themselves. So in this case, Hal Jordan and Parallax and all the things that Parallax did through him and with him is, in your opinion, is Hal Jordan absolved of responsibility, or to what extent is he absolved of responsibility?
He is, but at the same time, it's also seen as his will slipping to allow the possession in a way.
I'm talking about you. What do you think?
What
What
think?
is your, you're the judge and jury here. What is your...
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think that he can't really be responsible for what Parallax did, but he can kind of share some blame for allowing Parallax to take over.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that kind of leads us into the one I want to talk about, which is Jean Grey and the Phoenix, and specifically the Dark Phoenix saga. And in this case, this was a very similar to Parallax, I guess, a deliberate retcon to absolve Jean of guilt so that she can come back and be an X-Men again, be a character again. So the story that I'm talking about, of course, is where essentially, try very hard not to do spoilers, unlike some people, but essentially...
It's like a 40-year-old story.
Don't care.
Okay,
But essentially,
right.
If you know the story, Jean Grey had to die, period. Whatever was going on with her when she was bonded to the Phoenix Force, she committed genocide of an entire race, period. Like, she had to die. And so it totally made sense in that world, in that story. But then, of course, you can't bring her back because, much like Hal, you can't absolve her of this. She did it. Whether it was with an entity or not, she was part of that. And it was such a huge thing that it could not be undone. It could not be forgiven, no matter what percentage of the entity was taking over her. So when she was bonded to the Phoenix, she did this, she had to die, period. And so the retcon, of course, was where it never was Jean in the first place. It was just the Phoenix, 100% the Phoenix, and then that absolved Jean Grey of that. And so in that case, I would say, if we're going to, put our verdict in, I would say in the original story, Jean was absolutely culpable and had to die. I'm not saying she deserved to die. I think that's very different. And I don't want to get into a whole lot of, capital punishment thing. But if Jean had lived, and Jean and Scott dealing with that and trying to live with that and live any sort of normal life, as normal as you can get as an X-Men, it wouldn't have been possible. And when you're looking at a character, Jean had to die. For the character arc, that's what had to happen. When it came back and turned out that it was completely 100% the Phoenix Force and not Jean at all, then yeah, she's completely absolved of any responsibility towards what happened during the Dark Phoenix saga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's my take on that. Like, that's the entity that I know. So, so we're going to talk about now, or Dan's going to talk about, it's always going to come back to Spider-Man, period. For me, it's always going to come back to Batman. For him, it's always going to come back to Spider-Man. So now we're going to talk about Venom.
Yes. Well, we're actually going to talk about Venom and Carnage together.
Fair enough. Okay.
The symbiotes can essentially be considered entities in a way, like in the same way, but like their name implies, it's a symbiosis.
Yeah, I always think of them as more like the Goa'uld from Stargate. Not necessarily a worm living in the belly, but symbiotic in that they help each other out. They need each other to survive. Like,
well,
what's the Goa'uld
I would consider the Goa'uld parasites because they take control of their host completely. It's the Takra. Takra are the good ones that are more symbiosis. But we're getting off the topic here.
Well, I'm trying to, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because, see, I always thought that Venom did take over.
No.
Okay.
That's why it's called a symbiote. because it has a symbiosis with its host.
And that's what we do. We create baselines for your understanding.
Yes.
Go ahead. By referencing very obscure sci-fi shows.
Yeah, very much. Venom has had a lot with his history. There's been in the last decade or so, there's been stuff revealed about the race of the symbiotes. They've been given a name finally, the Clintar, and it has been revealed that the Clintar are basically good guys, the cosmic protectors. And so the Venom Clintar, or symbiote, whatever you want to call it, is different because one of its first hosts was apparently something happened and the host went a little crazy, and it actually affected the Clintar to be more violent and be not necessarily evil, but...
So do they retain elements of their hosts even when they move to a new host?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
That's why Venom actually has some of Spider-Man's powers, because he's retained those abilities, and it's kind of like a hive mind in a way. It keeps the memories that it acquired also.
But Hive is DC. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Depends on what Hive.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hive was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm very, very sorry that I...
You should know that.
You're shaking the table.
Oh, okay.
Continue. So, they bond, they retain some elements, he has some of Spider-Man's powers. Continue.
Yeah. And, so it's very much... It is very much a... like I said, symbiosis.
Okay, symbiosis.
Symbiosis, where...
Mutually beneficial.
The symbiotes, the Clintar, will affect the host, and the host will actually affect the Clintar.
Okay.
That's very much like why Carnage is the way he is. That was a serial killer who bonded with the spawn of Venom.
Oh, jeez.
And it of course, the serial killer aspect was bonded into the baby symbiote, if you will, and became completely psycho. So anyone bonds with Carnage essentially is Carnage. And Carnage and Cletus Cassidy have such a symbiosis that, unlike Venom, they don't speak in terms of we, they speak in terms of I, because they are the same entity, essentially. They are completely joined.
That's just terrifying. Venom, not Venom, I'm sorry. Carnage freaks me out.
Yes,
completely.
Carnage should freak you out. That's
I don't even know everything about Carnage. I probably shielded myself from a lot of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so wait, you're telling me that Venom and Carnage are the same race?
Yes. Yeah. That's...
Okay, I don't like Venom as it is. No, I just like him less because he's related to...
Yeah, he's his
Carnage.
dad, essentially.
All right. So, with that said, let's pull it back and talk about Peter. When Peter was affected with the Venom symbiote, the things that he did, did he do anything like that would have to be judged?
He did. He was more violent.
Okay.
So in a way, there was also when he would sleep, the symbiote would actually take over.
Okay.
And go out and beat up criminals
So
very violently.
So it's a Jekyll and Hyde situation.
I guess. Yeah, I guess
Okay.
that fits. Yeah.
And the dancing, can we absolve him of the dancing?
No, that was all Peter. Spider-Man 3, or Sam Raimi, I should say. That was all Sam Raimi.
Okay, so we're not even attaching that to the comics. It's Sam Raimi. All right, continue.
So there are stuff that that Spider-Man did while bonded that he would regret.
Okay. Should he forgive himself for those things, though?
I believe, for the most part, he should.
I don't think he would, knowing Peter. I mean, the very thing that makes him Spider-Man is something that technically isn't his fault, but that he carries guilt for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. See, that's Spider-Man for you. He will feel guilty no matter what
Peter.
happens. Yeah. Peter.
Not to make too fine of a line between the hero and the mask, but
Yes, but Peter is truly himself when he is Spider-Man.
Fair. That's true.
Yes.
Sort of like Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is the mask. Like I said, it all comes back to Batman and Spider-Man for us.
Yeah.
So, comment below whether or not you agree with our verdicts here. Now, I will say with we didn't touch on Carnage because I think absolutely they're both culpable. They're both just horrible. I don't even no. 100% guilty. Lock them away, etc. But comment below with Parallax, with Dark Phoenix, with Venom, or any others that you can think of that, because we kind of mentioned Spectre to a degree. We also didn't mention other hosts that Venom had. How culpable are these people, are these characters for what happens to them while they are overtaken by this entity, whether it's symbiotic or complete overtake. And also do not forget to like this video and subscribe. And I guess that's all we have for you today. And feel free to give us any video topics that you guys want us to cover. You've got the literary critic on my end, you've got the comic geek on his end, and we will dig very deep and go off into tangents, and it's a beautiful thing. Thanks for watching.
All right, bye.